Well, hello everybody, and welcome in tonight. Welcome in to the Six Screens Telenetwork. Wow, we have got our premiere program of the night. We have got Barbara Anderson. Watchtower Insider Tells All. That's the name of the program, and we're so glad to have Barbara as part of our network here at the Six Screens Telenetwork. We're going to bring Barbara on, and here's Barbara. Now, Barbara, we're so glad once again, boy. You do your homework. You bring on some really good guests. You're quite the program director here and producer and interviewer. You're everything. You're doing a great job, Barbara. Thank you.
Well, coming from you, I appreciate the compliment. Thank
Well,
you so
well,
much.
I mean it sincerely. Now, tell us about your guest tonight.
Very, very interesting gentleman from Texas. And he's going to tell us about the word that you mentioned before, carnage. He chose that word for the theme of our discussion this evening. And when you think of carnage, you think of, or perhaps if you're a history student, you think of the Battle of Gettysburg and the massacre that took place there. And so it is said that there was a great carnage. So to the average individual, it means great loss of life, as in a battle. But since around the 19th century, it also can have a figurative meaning, and that's the way Tommy meant it. But it's serious and can cause loss of life. The way that carnage can happen throughout the world can be so disastrous, so horrible, it doesn't stop. And sometimes it takes the intervening of somebody on the outside world to get involved and put a stop to it. And so how does that fit in with Tommy's theme here about this carnage must end? Well, what carnage are we talking about? Not actual bloodshed, but we're talking about those who are Jehovah's Witnesses who didn't choose to be Jehovah's Witnesses. And they have had to endure disastrous results in their lives because they are very, very unhappy. Many of them, sorry to say, end their lives because they were forced in a life they did not choose. They were deprived of a choice of a way of life. It could be the youth who were the children of Jehovah's Witnesses who were forced to be raised in in a manner that they would never have chosen for themselves. Or it could be an adult who has thought twice about the religion that they did choose, but they're in something that is causing them such unhappiness and they can't get out because then they're deprived of family. And what could be worse than being deprived of your family, and your family didn't choose to be forced. They didn't choose, but they're forced to isolate themselves from loved ones because of something that they chose a long time before in their lives, such as something in a social realm or in a religion. So we are going to talk about the suffering. And Tommy has seen in his years as an elder, as a pioneer, a great deal of suffering in an organization, Jehovah's Witnesses, that claims to be the happiest religion. But the reality are the happiest people in a religion, but the reality is not that, but the opposite for too many people around the world. Now, Tommy has many things to tell us. And he's very, very active man, as you will learn, in his private life, his business life, his former religion. So let's have Tommy talk to us about his life and introduce himself.
Yeah, in fact, hold on one second, Barbara. I just want to mention before Tommy comes on that we're going to make this show near the end very interactive. Say about the program ends at 8, so somewhere around 20 minutes of 8. Well, we're gonna go live here as far as telephone calls and even people coming on to ask Tommy some questions. It really would be great. So about 20 minutes before, we will open up the telephone lines for questions from the audience. That's okay with you, Tommy?
Absolutely.
So
All right.
For Tommy and I, we are in the Central Time Zone, so that's 20 to 7.
Yep. Excellent.
Okay. So Tommy has been in our life not all that long, and he visited our home not too long ago, and we thoroughly enjoyed him. Very, very interesting person, as you will all see this evening. So I'm going to turn it over to you. I'm going to comment like I always do when you say something that really strikes me, and I want to know more. And so you introduce yourself, Tommy. I'd like to know what your history is. I didn't ask you this before, but I thought about it. Your name is Geske. What nationality?
That's German.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
That's interesting to me.
Yeah, that's German.
Okay.
Well, let me say this before I get started. First of all, what a really honor it is to be here with you, Barbara.
Thank you.
And I'm not going to stay here long because I know, but I want to thank you for your work. You are an ambassador of love and justice on behalf of a lot of people who have no voice. And it is one of the most important things happening on the earthly plane today, to get to the bottom of the carnage that is befalling our children. My focus is not just the children of Jehovah's Witnesses, because this ecclesiastical privilege and its abuse is very widespread. We're talking about it as it relates to the Watchtower, but this is a worldwide problem. And I do see you as a giant, and I think it's very fitting that you as a woman is leading the charge on this. I have so much respect for you, and I want to start out with that.
Thank you.
Okay. Now, having said that, and also I enjoyed myself thoroughly at your home. You and Joe.
Thank you.
It was a wonderful day, and I look forward to coming back.
I do what I do because it's very important to me, but I could never have done all of this all these years if it wasn't for Joe. And it's too bad Joe isn't here sitting by my side, that he could be part of these interviews too, but he has his problems with as he's getting older, his age is catching up with him, and it isn't catching up with me yet.
No, but let me say, Joe did his heavy lifting when it mattered, and you're here now, and that's the support he affords you. God bless Joe, and you as well.
Thank you.
Anyway, I was raised in South Louisiana. Mom started attending the Kingdom Hall when I was 5. I don't remember the Methodist church. About the extent of that was a little baby bird that was outside some stained glass. This is the only recollection I have of the Methodist church. I had a wonderful time being raised as a witness. I can't sit here and tell you that my life was terrible. That would be a lie. And I don't want to sit here and deal in lies. I want to sit here and just talk about the truth as the truth presents itself to us for us to see. And I will tell you, I have many fond memories of being raised. I was raised in a religiously divided home. My father was agnostic, although he was a very principled man. And in fact, most of my principles I take from my father, and I told him that before he died. I made a lot of progress as a young man at the Kingdom Hall. And for a long time, I thought it was because of what I was hearing. But then I realized that, principles matter. Principles matter a great deal. And handling things that matter is very important. And I realized that I learned that from my dad. But we went to the Kingdom Hall. I made many good friends. I know many of them today. Some are still active, some are not. I feel a lot of love for those people. I have a lot of respect for many of them. And I know that many of them still and do care and care about me and love me. It was not the easiest thing growing up as a witness. I was the only non-Catholic in an all-Catholic school. Many times when there were things that needed to be explained about the differences in our beliefs, I was left to do that alone. So at a very young age, I learned to defend my faith and did so every time. I didn't shrink back. I was just always that kind of kid that enjoyed engaging in conversation and would do so on behalf of my brothers and my God. It was a very important thing to me. We stayed very active. Mom read the Bible to me every day. There wasn't one day that went by that woman, that godly woman who is still an active witness, didn't either read the Bible. We read the text. We studied for the Watchtower, the book study. We had family studies there in the hall. So it was a very close-knit thing. And I being in South Louisiana, that cultural thing had an influence. I also have a connection to Texas. I live here now. My grandmother, who was also a witness, was in North Texas, in the Panhandle of Texas. And I had the privilege to associate with different congregations, and I would see the differences. So I had questions, but I was always obedient. I always listened, even though I would hear things about, okay, well, the society says this, or the society says that as a kid. And I'm like, that doesn't sound right. That's not loving. But I would accept it because I was an obedient child. And you find yourself doing that a lot. You question, you hear something, you go, where's the love in that? Right? Often we were told how terrible the kids in school were, but we're different. And then I would find out, I was treated many times by the kids at school better than the kids at the hall. And so it was always some conflict. But again, I was an obedient child, and I listened. As I got older,
many people can identify with you that are listening tonight because they went through similar experiences.
Well, we're sheep. You're taught from the Watchtower and at the Kingdom Hall to be a sheep. And if you're serious about that, then you try to do that.
Yes.
And I did. As I got older, I knew that my mindset was a little different than most. I recall being asked if I was going to go to Bethel. And I told the circuit officer, no, I have no intention to go to Bethel. Well, why not? Well, I didn't use the word that was in my head with him, but I said, I know a lot of these boys have left here to go to Bethel, and they're not good people. Now, that wasn't for me to say I think the people at Bethel were bad. It was just I could not identify with that kind of spirituality. It was always looking down their nose or talking in a manner which was exclusionary. I was never that person. I did not think and have never believed the Watchtower to be an organization of elites. But if you listen to the doctrine, you kind of fall in is that everyone else is bad and we're the only good people in the hopper here. So you come away with that conclusion, whether that is a actual edict that's handed down from above or not. You just naturally come to this place in your mind is that Jehovah's Witnesses are better than everyone around them. We're more moral. We have a better grasp on life, and it's sadly it's not so. Mm-hmm. And what we're going to talk about further tonight is it will be an example of this, and we'll be able to see that very clearly. I continued to make progress. Eventually, I met and married a young woman, a wonderful woman. We're no longer together, but I have a lot of respect for her. She is still an active witness. I found myself almost in a period in my late teens when I almost left. And if I had not met her and her family, I probably would have taken a different path just based on the things in front of me. But after we married, I fell in with some brothers in the river parishes area who took me in and mentored me into being a spiritual man. And these brothers were much different from some of the brothers around. They were very sheep oriented. They loved the sheep. And I would spend hours sitting and talking with many of these brothers. It was such an enjoyable time. I learned so much about people. I remember one time Brother Ashton said to me, he says, Tommy, he says, if the sheep know you love them, you can tell them anything. But if they question whether or not you love them, you can't tell them anything. And it was so right, but love was always first. And I enjoyed that about my early adulthood. I pioneered there in the river parishes. I have a lot of fond memories and friends. And it seemed at that time, which was the 80s, that there was a focus, at least in that area, on the friends and on making sure we had get-togethers. We played cards. The sisters would cook. In fact, it was interesting that we'd go to these get-togethers. The sisters bring all these meals, and it was like a big competition. It was a wonderful time to be a witness, and I enjoyed every minute of it. But now that takes me to my appointment. I was 21 years old when I was appointed as a ministerial servant. Subsequent to that, at 26, I was appointed as an elder, which was unheard of at that time. It was a kind of an unwritten rule that you had to be at least 30 to be an elder. But I made progress. I was articulate, and the brothers tend to like that. So I made a lot of progress in those years, and I was able to serve with some really good men who helped me along, both as a teacher and as a preacher, and mostly as a shepherd, because I learned to care about the friends. And like I said, it was a very good time in my life. I can't point to anything at that point and say, hey, this was a problem. However, it does take me to what I'd like to talk to you about this evening. If you have any questions of me, I'll answer them now.
Well, what you're saying is a story said over and over again by those who are older, who had wonderful memories of an organization that appeared to have a lot of love for those who were associating in it. There were congregations that had problems, and sometimes those problems were because they were reflecting the elder body, so they had a lot of responsibility of the lives of the people in the organization. I remember the 80s well, and I sympathize with what you're saying, and but life goes on, and change has come to our world. Not necessarily with just Jehovah's Witnesses. Change is in the air, and people have to make the best of it. And so I think that's what you're going to talk about, the changes that have come in the organization. But the organization is run by people. And,
Old men.
It's all right.
Old men.
It's a crapshoot.
Old men move slow. That's what I was told my whole life.
Yeah, you just
old men move slow, Tommy. You need to calm down and just wait on Jehovah.
Yeah, right. So
let me say this before, you mentioned about the elder body, and it is my experience, my personal experience, that your experience as a witness is directly related to the elder body that you are with. If you're with a bunch of good guys that really love the friends and are trying to, then you're going to have a little different take on what it is to be a witness than if you're stuck with some, you don't want me to cuss, but I could, some guys that don't really care about you. Yeah. And that makes all the difference.
Yeah, well, they care about the position.
Correct.
Sad to say, that's a trait that humans have. And if you get into that, the center of a problem that's not that you haven't caused, but that is going on, then you could be gravely hurt, and so that makes you look askance at the organization. So it just depends on the circumstances of our past. But nowadays, it is. And I'm not saying today. I'm saying this is a different century. And with it has come tremendous changes in how people even view life.
That's right.
Right. So we're going to talk about these as an adult, and you're going to give us some experiences as an elder that you've never forgotten. So
yes. So I would just say, before I move to that, you made the comment about all the changes, right? I just want you to know that I wore a beard before wearing a beard was cool. Okay? All right. All right. So let me tell you about when I was at the age of 21, I was appointed as a ministerial servant. I had a very dear friend of mine that I grew up with. He lived in a neighboring town, and we spent a lot of time together as friends, right? And at this point, I had 2 children in my life. He had 3. He had a boy that was an adopted child, and then he had 2 of his own. And Gene and I were within, I don't know, a year of each other. I think I was 10 months older than Gene, something like that. At any rate, Gene calls me one day, and he says, "Tommy," he says, "I have something to tell you, and I can't even fathom." I said, "What's wrong?" He says, "All 3 of my boys were molested from someone at the Kingdom Hall." And I don't want to mention names, but I will say it wasn't an elder, it wasn't a ministerial servant, but it was a young man who was the star pupil of the presiding overseer. And so what you got to understand, Barbara, in any family or tribe arrangement, there's this sphere of protection, right? And immediately when someone gets into trouble, no matter who we are, human nature, we go to protect our own. And so Gene calls me, and he goes in, and I was incredulous. Now remember, I'm 22 years old. I've heard of the molestation in other places, but this is my first time to actually touch it, right? To feel it and have it come close to me. And so I lived a couple hours from Gene. And he told me, he says, now, again, at this point, I'm a ministerial servant. I'm not really familiar with KS publication or all of the regulations and the things that go into a judicial matter and all of the principles that are involved. And so we're talking, and he says to me, he says, "Well, Tommy," he says, "they're not going to charge him judicially." And I said, "Why not?" And he said, "Well, I don't want these boys to face their accusers." Now, these boys were 6, 4, and 2. 6, 4, and 2. Mm-hmm. And all 3 were molested numerous times. Now, he felt a lot of guilt because he and his wife go out to a movie, the young brother at the hall, you let him sit, and you come home and this is happening. Well, his oldest son was Whitney Smith, and Whitney took the brunt of it. And as it all unfolds, Gene decides that he's not going to allow his boys to sit in front of their accuser and have to relive all of this carnage again. Right? So, which as a father, I can totally understand. Right? So nothing is done. It's completely dropped. These kids, suffer this abuse. Nothing really more is said. So the next summer we're having, I believe this was 1987, if I recall right. the Divine Justice Assembly. So I see the young man directing traffic as an attendant, parking attendant at the district convention in Lafayette, Louisiana. And as I'm driving in, I roll my window down and I see him.
Whitney.
No, I see the young man that did the molestation.
Oh, I see. Okay.
I'm sorry. If I wasn't clear, let me clear that up.
Yes.
Nothing is done. We move it forward. And I see the young man who molested the 3 boys as we're driving into park at the convention. Mm-hmm. So I roll my window down and I poke my head out of the window and I said, "Divine justice, Richard. That's what it's all about." I rolled on by. Now, I knew, or I felt, I can't say I know, but I felt very strongly this man did this. I had no firsthand knowledge. And that's one of the things I'll say to you, Barbara. I don't like to say things unless I have firsthand knowledge. But at the same time, you're being accused of this. These children are acting this way. There's very little doubt that this has taken place. Well, he immediately went to the presiding overseer and told him that I was harassing him. So I'm in the cleaning department, young ministerial servant working down as a captain on the desk, this wonderful cleaning assignment. And up walks the 2 brothers. Now, understand, the brother was a presiding overseer. He was also the assembly chairman, right? The district convention chairman. So he was the circuit, the assembly overseer, and then he had the responsibility at the district convention as well. I believe it's now called regional, if I'm not mistaken. Anyway, so he comes on down to the cleaning department. He seeks me out, he and the secretary of the congregation. And he says, "Hey, Tommy," he says, "we hear that you're harassing Richard." I said, "Harassing? Are you kidding?" He said, "No." I said, "No." I said, "Let me tell you, Ralph." I said, "What I did was I rolled the window down and I told that boy, I repeated the theme of the convention to him and told him that's what it was all about." And I said, "Now, if you're guilty, that might bother you. But if you're just my brother, you would take that as a salute, right? I'm giving you credit. I'm giving you kudos. Hey, high five. Assembly convention, divine justice, baby. That's what it's all about." But the way the boy took it told us everything. And when I said that to Ralph looked at the floor. He said, "Tommy, Gene would not allow those boys to sit in front of their accuser, and our hands are tied. It would have been a reproach on Jehovah's name." And I looked him square in the eye. I was 22 years old. And I said, "The reproach is doing nothing. The reproach is to do nothing." You feel that? So they left. Nothing more was said. I didn't get pulled into a judicial meeting. There was no more said. And it was dropped. And years go by. Now, Whitney Smith ends up living with me and my wife as a child. The mother and the dad split for a while. And Whitney lived with us. So my ex-wife, her first pioneer partner was Whitney Smith. And they stayed with us for several months. And finally, the couple, they put their problems aside, they get back together. So Whitney moves back home. They then moved to the river parishes, about 2 hours east. And they lived there for about 6 months. And Gene came to me one day and he said, "Tommy," he says, "if anything ever happens to me, will you just look after my boys?" And I said, "Absolutely, I will. I'll do my best." Right? Life is dynamic. It changes, but I'll do my best. Tragically, a couple of months after this conversation, Eugene was killed in a car accident. He was on the river road, blacked out, and ran into a truck. His sternum struck the wheel, punctured his heart, and he died. Now, at this point, one of the toughest things I had done, I went to the brothers. I got the call. I called the elders, and they had me tell his widow that he was gone. Oh, no, it was good. It was good training. I was happy they did it. But at the same time, it got more difficult for this boy. And of course, now you're with your mom. Your dad is gone. You've been molested. Nothing was done. This kid is conflicted, right? How could he not be? How could he not be? So a little more time goes by. She moves back to the Lafayette area. And then she meets a man, and they marry, and they move to Huntsville. And I don't hear
Alabama?
Huntsville, Alabama. Yes, not Texas. And so we stayed in touch. We'd talk on the phone, but I did not see Kim or the boys for many years. And then when he was about 17, at this point, I'm now appointed as an elder. I'm serving in Waxahachie, Texas. I'm very busy. And I would add, very busy, just so you get an idea of the judicial stuff that I've been involved with. In Dallas-Fort Worth, during the 90s, there were 60,000 publishers.
Mm-hmm.
That's a small town.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, I was very active. Spoke on the Assembly Day programs, the Circuit Assembly programs, the district programs, was used at a very high level. And judicially, in the time that I served in over 150 judicial matters. Now, let me tell you, that is an ungodly number. You may not know that or not, but there are men who serve 50 years and don't do 10.
Mm-hmm.
But we're in an area where there are a lot of young people. There's a lot of trouble. And of course, we're always trying to get into people's business and
it's a transient
and fix stuff,
also.
right? Stuff that we really had a lot of looking back had no business being involved with. But I say that to you because I want you to understand that as an elder, I was very busy in that regard. And so I've got a lot of experience as to what actually happens in a judicial matter, much different from when Ralph talked to me at 22, right? And so now he's with me again. Kim calls. I say, yes, send him. We'll do what we can with him. And he lived with us again for about 6 months. And he did well. And she sent him because he was troubled. He never got over being molested and having nothing done about it.
That's
right? It angered him till the day that he died. And we'll talk more about that. But I took him in, and it went well until he decided to steal some money from one of the widows in the Kingdom Hall, and I sent him home. Right? Mm-hmm. I said, "Hey, man, $200? You would trade family? You would go right for $200? What is wrong with you?" And then I sent him away, and I really expected to hear from him because, Barbara, I love this boy, and he loved me, and I loved his father, and I still love his mother and his family today, right now. And so I expected to hear from him again, but boy, this stubborn cuss, it took him, 10 years, 15 years it was 17. I expected to hear maybe 27. It was like 34 when he finally reached back out to me. And I was so delighted. I told him, I said, Whit, I knew you would call me one day. I just didn't expect it to be this long. You hard-headed boy. But he struggled, and he struggled so much with personality disorders.
It's typical.
Anger.
It's so typical. I've heard.
He couldn't understand why nothing was done. Either at the congregation level. And I will tell you that from what I understand, later he was molested again by someone else, a witness, and nothing was done. So I did not know that until later. So at this point, I employ him. He works for me for a period of time. We get along great. I began to attach myself to his family. In fact, his children call me Big Poppy. And it was a good time. But something happened on the road. He got upset with me because I didn't side with him. Again, got all this anger. You can't be rational. He gets angry with me, and he estranges himself from me a second time. About a year goes by, and we don't talk much. In fact, I'm not going to tell you what he told me is some expletives, but he wanted me out of his life. He was that angry with me. And so I guess he equated me with a lot of what wasn't done. I was like the father figure or whatever, the spiritual person in all of this, and he had just a very difficult time rationalizing all of it. And so I don't know, a year or so goes by, and out of the blue, I get a text from him. And he says, Tommy, he says, I know I don't deserve it, but would you sit with me again? And I said, yes, sir, I will. I absolutely will. So I was very busy. We were remodeling a home, and I had a business going on, and we kept trying to connect, and he'd have something and I'd have something and he'd have something. And then finally, one Monday evening, I'm sanding floors, and I call him. I say, hey, Whit, I'm sanding floors over here. Why don't you come meet me? Pick up some Cane's chicken. We'll eat some chicken, break some bread, catch up. It'll be like old times. He said, I'm on my way. So he shows up about an hour later at the house. And at this point, when he walks in, I can tell already he's very dark. He's in a very, very dark place. You can see that he's manic. And so we sit out on the back porch, and immediately he says to me, he says, Tommy, do you remember telling me that you would outlive me? And I said, no, Whitney, I don't remember telling you that. I said, maybe it was one of the times we were cross paths with each other. I said, that's not a very nice thing to say. Don't worry, son, you're going to outlive me. And he said, well, you did say that. And then he just dropped it. And he said, it doesn't matter now, Tommy. And so then he asks me, he says, where are you right now with the Watchtower? And I said, that's a wonderful question. I said, because I am a man whose faith is in conflict with the religion, right? You cannot abide allowing this kind of carnage to go by and not be looked at and take yourself seriously as a spiritual man. It's not possible. You can't be, it's not reconcilable. It's not reconcilable to know these things and do nothing. So we talked a lot about how he saw the faith and how I saw the faith. And then he wanted to talk about his molestation. And he went into that. He talked about what happened in Lafayette. He talked about what happened later. He talked about all of those things. And I just listened. He wanted to get that out. And directly I said to him, hey, man, it's getting cold out here. Let's go inside. And so we did. And we sat down. And he says to me, Tommy, says, there's one more thing I want to talk to you about. He said, what's that? He said, I want to talk to you about what happened on the job. And I said, Whit, I'm not going to do that. And I said, here's why. I said, you were drunk. The other guys were drunk. It was after hours. This has, I made a decision, and I'm sorry if it hurt your heart. But this is the decision that I had to make at the time because I've had all these conflicting stories. And he just looked down, and he looked down for a long time. He says, I understand. And then he looks at me and he says, Tommy, I have 2 firearms in my pants right now. Do you mind if I take them out? I said, absolutely not, Whit, go ahead. Now you can imagine that this young man showed up with 2 firearms at the house on the night that he was looking to find out, to find peace, to find solace, right? To get reconciliation from the carnage that was his life, right? Constantly being, first of all, being molested, and then constantly being called a hoodlum because you can't figure it out. You guys don't care about me. Nothing was ever done. And so you come to the Kingdom Hall with all this attitude. Now you're just a bad guy. Right. So
was he still a witness? Was he still associated?
Oh, yeah, no, they remained attending. Now, after he was an adult, he stopped going. But as a child, he went. He went through the molestation, and then they took him to the Kingdom Hall on and off, his entire life. And even when with me, I took him to the Kingdom Hall. It was a priority to go to the Kingdom Hall, and so that's how we made that work. And so this is why he's conflicted. You are molested. Nothing is done. Then you go to the Kingdom Hall and you're told you're a bad person because you got a bad attitude because you were molested. Hello?
Mm-hmm.
As older men, can we not see what we're doing?
Mm-hmm.
Can we not adjust this in some way? We should be able to, right? That's what should happen if you're a spiritual man and you're looking for happy endings. Right?
I shouldn't have been dealing with it in the first place.
Absolutely.
It should have gone to the authorities who are trained.
Well, you speak to something, because I will tell you that in 1997, in November of that year, when the Watchtower released the article, "Abhor what is wicked,"
Exactly.
right? They also sent out a letter to all the bodies of elders, which basically said, hey, if there's a molestation issue going on, report it to the police anonymously. Well, I looked over at one of my fellow elders who I have a lot of respect for, still do today, and as I know it, he's still a witness. And I told him, I said, I got a problem. He said, what's that? I said, I can't do that. If I have to deal with something involving pedophilia, I'm calling the police.
Mm-hmm.
And they're going to get prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. Mm-hmm. And he said to me, well, maybe we ought to make sure you don't get on any judicial matters concerning pedophilia. And so I never did. Now, I dealt with this issue, but not judicially. Mm-hmm. And I had other issues and dealt with other things, but never did I sit in judgment of someone who was accused of pedophilia. But now in dealing with these matters, I've dealt with a lot in my time as an elder. And
this is a crime. That's why the elders shouldn't be dealing with it. It's a crime.
Exactly. We're not qualified. I mean, we could. That's a whole nother. You and I talk for an hour about that.
Sure.
But moving forward, I'm in the room with this guy, and he has these pistols down in his pants. He pulls these pistols out, and he spills the shells on the floor. And he said, it's my shield, bro. It's not my sword. And he spills them all out. He picks the bullets up. He puts them on the shelf with the guns. And so just because I want to show him I have no fear of this, I said, well, let me show you my pistol. So I went out to my pickup truck. I got my pistol. I showed him my pistol. And we sat back down and we talked for a little longer. He says, Tommy, I want to stay here all night with you. And I said, Whit, I can't, brother. I got a meeting first thing in the morning. So we hugged, and he went home. And that was the last time I saw him.
What happened?
Well, the next morning I got a call from his little wife, who was not a witness, who stood by him through thick and thin. Let me tell you, talk about a wife. She was good to him because he was very charming. He was a very handsome young man, glib, quick-witted. Whitney is his name, quick-witted. And she stood by him through all of his trial and tribulation. And he wasn't always kind to her, right? I'm not going to paint this boy out to be a choir boy, because he wasn't. He suffered some damage behind all of this. Okay. And it made him angry. And sometimes that anger came out. Mm-hmm. And that's understandable. That's understandable that if you're thrown into this thing and nothing is really done, nothing is ever looked at, all of the excuses in the world given to not handle it, you would be angry. And so he was. And she calls me and she says, Tommy, she says, Whitney just shot himself. Now, he was in the hotel room, and now he was on medication. And I think to a large degree, some of the medication probably added to his depression. But he pulled a pistol out with them in the room, and he blew his head off. And I went down to the hotel while they took his body out. And I watched his mother and his stepfather and his wife cry. And, I'll tell you, people live guilt, whether they should or not. I'm not here to judge for that. But no matter what happens, when something like this happens, you blame yourself. Mm-hmm. You can't get around it. And maybe there is some culpability, but there's never all liability on one person. It's just not like that.
Well, that's right.
His mother and his little wife will live with this stain, this reproach, this carnage for the rest of their lives. And do you think anyone's asking questions? No, they're not. Matter's been forgotten. The brothers that dealt with it, some of them are dead, or didn't deal with it, as the case may be. Some of them are dead. Time has gone by, and we've not fixed this thing. And it would appear as though there's no interest in even fixing it. Look at what's going on in Pennsylvania. Look at what happened in Australia. I can tell you, Barbara, when you did your Dateline thing, I had one of the sisters come to me. I was an active elder at the time. She says, have you seen this apostate woman that's going to do this interview on pedophilia? What about apostate lies? And I hung my head and I thought, gosh, I wish it was an apostate lie. I didn't say that to her at the time, but I wished it was an apostate. I would have given money for it to be an apostate lie.
I see.
But it wasn't. It was the truth. And we're still dealing with all of this.
And that's why, just like in a carnage in a battle, sometimes it takes outside intervention to settle things. That is exactly what is happening with the Watchtower, because they have not addressed this properly all these many years, and so many children have been molested. So the outside world has had to intervene. And so Jehovah's Witnesses have a very, very bad name because of how they have not handled this correctly. Their lawsuits are, it's legend. People are going to be talking about this for years to come, of all of the money that the Watchtower, it will come out that they're having to pay for what they didn't do, and that is protect children. So
sadly, they had every opportunity in the world.
Absolutely.
And to be honest, for a long time, this was 1990. Look, going back to 87, I knew this pedophilia thing was a problem that wasn't being taken seriously. That was apparent from the time I was 22. Right. And then I followed it as a ministerial servant, as an elder going forward. And I was hopeful at one point that they might do something, but they seem to be more interested in protecting, assets, whatever it is that has them not wanting to deal with this. Because honestly, if you claim to represent the highest personage in the universe and you don't want to bring reproach on this individual, shouldn't you be doing the things that would clean this up, that would take away the ability of people to say, hey, y'all don't do this? And it's very simple. It's not a difficult thing.
That's right. That's
if you were asking them to do something that was huge, that was, like astrophysics, then you might be able to understand why this might be a challenge. But this isn't. This is about, okay, let's just get serious about protecting children. What a novel concept. Let's protect our kids. And of course, that permeates not just the Watchtower, but that's all religions right now because of what's happening in the world. There's a lot of human trafficking. There's things that are going on, and 20 years ago, we couldn't even conceive that we would be in this place right now. That's where we're at. And I would love, my heart would do leaps and bounds if the Watchtower finally took it seriously, right? But where are we? What are you doing?
They are serious.
Kingdom halls and protecting children.
Oh, they're seriously lying about it, is what they're doing. And they've got a story a minute to different people in different countries, how they never had any programs for children. They never been around. The elders were not assigned to work with children. There was no buildings erected where there would be Sunday school. So no brick and mortar things to train children by those who took the lead in the organization. So yes, you're right. They're not dealing with this correctly when you have to lie about it. And there's just too many people who have can attest to the truthfulness of what the victims are saying. Just what you're saying is has been said privately over and over again, but they weren't listening. I always say the same thing about this. They weren't evil; they were stupid.
Exactly. Well, I would say to you now, the vast majority are not. The vast majority of the brothers, I believe, are well intended, and they have love in their hearts. Now, not all of them want to be bothered with shepherding the sheep. And if you're an elder among Jehovah's Witnesses and you don't care to shepherd the sheep, get out. Mm-hmm. Stop. Quit playing the game. You're just doing it for some privilege to get on a stage and give some talks or to be a big shot, right? If you don't care about the sheep, step off, mm-hmm. right? Because you people put them out when they don't. Barbara, I can tell you, I can attest firsthand to the ineptness of many elders when it comes to judicial matters. Seen a lot and corrected a lot, disrespect to women, and just on and on and on. And I don't think the brothers are bad. They're just not educated to handle these kind of problems. So if you're going to put a mechanism in place like this, you need to get some guys that actually have some chutzpah, who know how to handle people, have a command of the scriptures. This was the biggest thing. I sat on a judicial matter one time with a man that was 25 years my senior. He was an assistant assembly overseer. And we sat and we listened to a young lady talk about what happened. And this young lady admitted that someone fondled her breasts. And this guy sits there and he says, "Well, we got pornea." Now I'm going to tell you the definition for pornea in the KS book is it's very specific and it's very tight. You just do a little bit and you've committed pornea. And I looked at him and I said, "What are you talking about?" So even within the KS publication, where the brothers are trying to help you to understand what is judicial and what's not, if you don't know the difference between having your breasts massaged and manipulating genitals, and you're making decisions about people's lives, you're in the wrong house. You're in the wrong place. If you don't to equate those two, even in without the KS publication, in my mind, right? Caressing a breast and manipulating genitals are not the same thing. And if you arrive at pornea that quickly, it tells me that there's a rush to put people into situations where you're going to judge. And the outcome of this, the problem is once you have disfellowshipped someone, right, they may never come back. They may not be able to withstand the tide. And so it's a serious thing. I told you that 150, in those 150, I agreed to disfellowship 5. And of those 5, probably 3, I did it reluctantly, and two people probably, I said, these people are over the top. They're going to hurt somebody if we don't protect. So I just never did. I didn't think that disfellowshipping anyone under 18 was necessary. Now, you got to question all of it. The Watchtower really needs to take a step back, look at the carnage that they're placing into people's lives, and ask yourself, is this really necessary, right? And I guess they're asking some of the questions. They've made some adjustments, but I don't know, those adjustments are too little too late. I don't know. I don't want to be the judge of that, but I know that now I'm looking at it and going, wow, okay, this is 2024. These problems have been around since the 80s. So now you're getting serious.
Yeah. Right.
I hope and pray that the motives are altruistic. I really do.
But should they even be dealing with this? You know very well that they shouldn't be even handling it. That it isn't their business. Why does a religion get into a business of also, I mean, you know very well that many people say the Watchtower is a business, and it's masquerading as a religion, and but they get themselves in this gradually from in Rutherford's years. And early on, if you look back at all of the pamphlets that came out talking about sin, and they began to get more and more involved with people's private lives on sin. And so it's only it's going to happen that you're going to make the wrong decisions when you deal with people and making decisions regarding their sin.
Exactly. You know, you're absolutely right. And in particular, you ask yourself, why get into people's lives? Why get into the bedroom?
Yeah.
You know, why start to place yourself in places where I can't tell you I cannot tell you, Barbara, the number of sisters who came to me concerned about oral sex over and over and over. And I'm like, why are we even here?
Yeah.
Why are we even here? And of course, you know, my advice was always, hey, follow your conscience, you know, because I'm not going to tell a woman what she can and cannot do in her own bed.
Yeah.
There's always an overreach.
And what resulted out of that overreach, I found out, I didn't find out a lot of circumstances, but I found out overall, they had to drop that business, getting themselves involved in that type of making a decision regarding oral sex. But they had to, because there were people who were, had private viewpoints on that. And many of the people who had outstanding viewpoints conflicting with the Watchtower's viewpoint, and it ended up tragically. And so many times women were half beaten to death over this issue. That's what this leads to. That's the carnage here. That is the blood. We're talking about slaughter of the innocents because of rules that they had no business in, and they still are into this. They say they aren't, because that has fallen by the wayside, but they still have the judicial hearings. Now they are acting like the kinder organization, like in Norway. They're trying to present, in Japan, we really don't do what you're saying we do. Why won't these people say like you? Why can't they just say it? We made a mistake.
Exactly.
We're moving forward. We believe we have the truth on our religious belief, and but we no longer are going to be so involved in people's personal affairs.
Well, Barbara, when you go back and you actually measure your life, you can see where you're duplicit. I was duplicit in cover-up involving my own family. I won't go into that. That's a whole nother conversation for another time, because I've got a lot of experience as far as with the organization and the issues and how it's dealt with. But I had one of the brothers call me. I was removed in 2006 for some comments that I made publicly that were sent to the society. And of course, it wasn't judicial, but they felt like my judgment was off, and I could not serve any longer. And so in 2006, I wasn't serving anymore. But I look back, I was at a circuit assembly when my youngest son actually he got baptized, and I went to the assembly for that, to see him get baptized. And one of the brothers ran and said, "Tommy, we handled your situation all wrong. You need to come back." And I don't know, man. It's okay. I was duplicit in the cover-up. There was in my own family. I'll talk to you about that, or maybe another time. But I know how these inner rooms work, and I know the frustration that you feel when you see something slipping away under something that really doesn't matter, but it's a big deal, right? Because we're told it's a big deal, and so you're not wanting to see people have to face this judicial thing, and so you make it you make an allowance, and this is what happens with elders, their children. Look, people talk about, oh no, that's not how it is. How it works, and I know because I protected my own children from some things, and I protected my ex-wife from some things, and I know that I helped protect other children from these judicial. So if everybody understands that these judicial things are maybe too much, look at it. Just look at your policy, and if it can be adjusted, guess what? Adjust it. It's not a terrible thing to measure your life and come back and say, I can be a better man. I can be a better woman, right? We can be a better organization. They don't want to, I guess. You have to take things head on, and they're just not dealing with this matter of pedophilia, and it's eating them up. Pennsylvania, Australia. I mean, these are decisions. And if you were to mention some of this to many actors, they would look at you like you have lost your mind. And before they even know it, this thing's going to implode. And imagine the disbelief. It's hard to conceptualize.
Well, the organization has always been like a revolving door. People come in and go out, come in and go out. That's part of most organizations, but you're not punished for. And if you belong to some group and you change your mind and you don't any longer want to be part of that, you're not punished for it. But the punishment for Jehovah's Witnesses is uncalled for. In so many ways, it's ludicrous. So why do they do this? Why? Well, it hasn't helped over the years. So now they are trying to look like they're the kinder and gentler organization because they're forced into it. There's nothing we can do about the past. We can only talk about these things, not with hatred, but we talk about them because it's reality. And we also should not carry these burdens ourselves, but we should seek out assistance and help through a proper, perhaps therapy or something like that. There's nothing wrong with that. The Watchtower has changed their opinion on that because they got in so much hot water by forbidding therapy even. So
I would like one quick story.
Go right
Talking
ahead.
about the older men and how what they're asked to do and what they see, right? You were talking about the oral sex thing earlier. I was in a body of elder meeting, a body of elders, and it was actually called to consider my qualifications, right? And because I had a young man come to me and he asked about this matter of oral, and my conscious, my advice to him, my counsel was to follow his conscience. And so the brothers pulled me in. At this point, I'm 28 years old. I've been an elder for 2 years. And one of the presiding overseers says to me, he says, Tommy, he says, you're going to say you believe oral sex is a sin, or we're going to have to consider your qualifications. Now, you can imagine, I'm 28, I'm new, and I actually like being an elder at this point in my life. It's a lot of fun, right? I'm enjoying my life right now. Barbara, I looked down and I took my Bible. Remember that old New World Translation we had, that black and maroon, beautiful, and I took my Bible and I flicked it across the room at my brother. He's probably 20 years older than I am. And he caught it. And I said, you show me in that book where it says it's a sin, and I'll hit my knees in front of all of you, and I will beg Jehovah for forgiveness. But I said, short of that, I'm so sorry I can't do that because I don't believe it's a sin. Do you know what happened in that meeting? There were 12 elders, and that man began to cry. And he said, in the 70s, this happened to me, and I wasn't strong enough to do what you just did. He looked around the room. He says, brothers, I don't think we have a problem here. Do you? And they dismissed that meeting, and I went home, and I was not removed. My point in telling you this story is that the older men, they discharge themselves of their responsibilities because they're serious, and they're told to do it. They don't always believe everything that they're told. And in regards to these matters, these personal matters of sexuality, these are matters that they don't have any business in.
Yeah.
And most of the witnesses believe this,
Mm-hmm.
right? There may be a few who say, oh, I don't want to do this kind of thing or that kind of thing. And that's your okay. But don't judge people for what they do behind closed doors.
Mm-hmm.
That's just not necessary.
Mm-hmm.
And it's none of your business.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And but the results, see, that's the whole deal here. The results are tragic. And so that proves the point that we're trying to make even today. If this organization wants to exist and continue on as a productive religion, that's their business. But it cannot continue on with those practices and forbidding people to do this or that. They can't go on. And I think they know it. But those who put these practices and policies into place are long gone. And so it's the later people who have inherited an organization that is in a state of what you really can call it a distress. It's in a state of distress.
Barbara, talking about this matter of pedophilia, and in particular with regards to Whitney Smith, he is not the only person. I know of another instance in North Texas where a young man was molested, literally died in a hotel room of a broken heart because they never got to the bottom of it. And that involved an elder who molested him and was never held accountable for it. And this kind of story, I wish I could say that it was isolated, but because of the imperfections of humans and the way that humanity is broken, and in particular, many times sexually, this kind of behavior you can't tolerate it in any way, because it grows itself. And when things are not handled, people are damaged. These are two young men I'm telling you about. I know who lost it, who died. The other case, he didn't kill himself. They surmise this boy was in his 20s, and they surmise he died of a broken heart. Right? Think about that. Think about a young man in his 20s. He went through some marital problems. It didn't work out with him and his little wife. They went through divorce, and a lot of it had to do with his dealing with the molestation of that he was sodomized by one of the elders, and he could not deal with it. He died of a broken heart. That's what the doctors told his family. He died of a broken heart.
The elders are put in a position as an authority figure, and everyone is told to look up to them and almost have a worshipful feeling towards them. And so especially young people that have no experience, and all of a sudden all of their illusions about the arrangement that they say Jehovah set up is dashed to pieces. And so without help, surely there is confusion and a broken heart. Those who are listening to us, every one of them have a story to tell. And they wouldn't have if this organization that we all participated in one way or another wasn't so intrusive. Isn't that so? It's intrusive.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, it's sad. And it has to end. And it could very well be that it is ending because of the court cases. And because the world has a means to put an end to this, such in Australia, if the Watchtower does not obey the government ruling on paying the victims, has been determined that they should pay certain victims under certain circumstances. If they continue to refuse to do this, they're going to lose their charity recognition. And that means they will have to pay taxes. And it will be astronomically impossible for them to do so. So they have to change their ways. As what we're seeing, people are not responding to the witness's message anymore. So, I know that you left the organization. Can you give us an idea of when you left it and what's your life like?
Sure. Let me give you a little bit of that. Thanks for asking. So I was removed in 2006. I tried to be reappointed. I reached out again. That's a whole nother story. We can talk about it another time, you and I. But I tried to reach out again in 2009.
Why did you want to reach out for it again?
Because, Barbara, look, you got to understand that for a man who's been on the platforms and is a big shot, and
I do understand.
Feel important, that you think that that's what your life is.
Mm-hmm, exactly.
It's not, but that's what you think, right?
Right?
Paul, the Apostle Paul, said he considered all refuse. Now that's how he saw his heritage, right? Refuse, garbage. And that's, I don't want to go there because you and I have had that conversation. But my point is that you have to look at it, right, and decide. And at this point in my life, I still thought, hey, I want to be an elder again. I was still married. I was not divorced. It was important to her for me to serve.
Sure.
And there were some things that happened in that relationship. It ended. And when it ended, I was disfellowshipped because, and I'll tell you, I went out and committed adultery on purpose to be disfellowshipped, to put my ex-wife in a position to decide, do I love Tommy or do I love Tommy the elder? And she decided, and I respect it. Look, I'm a hardworking man. I'm gone a lot, and it's not easy in these modern times to have. So I get all of that, but I wanted to be an elder, and it turned out that a gentleman who and I don't want to go into all of this part of the story, but I was redlined on the re-recommendation to be an elder at the same time that another brother was appointed, and how I knew I was redlined, I was told. And this man had single-handedly just destroyed my family life. And so it was hard for me to rationalize. And at this point, I'm questioning Jehovah. I'm questioning a lot about myself. And
Yes.
I was disfellowshipped. And it was while I was disfellowshipped that I come to realize that the organization is made of men. And much of what happens is not the direct result of Jehovah's Holy Spirit, but is the direct result of the machinations of men. And it came to me in a moment of very clarity, right? I was meditating. I was going through an acupuncture treatment while I was meditating, and it hit me like a ton of bricks. Almost like a voice in my head said, son, it's not me, it's these men. Get it right. And so when that happened, a light went off, and I was able to forgive myself. I subsequently was reinstated. And continued to attend for a while. And then a friend of mine who was an unbeliever, who's not a witness, told me there was an elder in common from the hall. And he says, Sam told me he goes by your house every day. And I thought to myself, these guys are if he's coming by my house every day just to see if I'm at home, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? Why are you checking me? So at this point, I said, I gotta quit. So I continued to make the meetings after 2011 sporadically, and then I made the last convention I made was in New Orleans with my mother at the Superdome. It was an international convention. I believe it was in 2015. And when I heard the brother say, if you're into herbal medicine or homeopathy, keep that stuff to yourself because people think that's quackery. When I heard that, I thought, wait a minute. The whole Eden allegory is about eating herbs and vegetables and taking care of your body what Mother Nature gives you, and you're going to sit here and tell me that allopathic medicine is superior? What has happened? I got up and walked out. I walked out of the convention. I never went back. And I realized that's a simple thing. But I think what really sold me was the issue with the Kingdom Halls and selling them off. And there was one piece of property actually in Midlothian, Texas, that they were going to build a Kingdom Hall. The brothers brought all the money together. They bought it, and then they ended up, the brothers, the organization decided they didn't need one there in Midlothian. Brothers kept the money, did not send it back. And a lot of the friends were troubled by that. You know, I wasn't even serving or attending at the time. And I had people call me and say, Tommy, what do you think of this? You know, they just kept the money. Well, they can do whatever they want, I guess. If you hold the purse, you get to decide what stays in it. But it didn't feel right, only because most of the money that was given by local publishers who, you know, sold off goods and bake sales and other stuff to raise money. I realize that they don't sanction that, but a lot of the friends do it to raise the money. And that money was raised and no remuneration at all. And it was the non-remuneration of the property that finally helped me to see this is a bad problem, because you cannot take property from people, not remunerate them in any business setting, and it not be considered fraud. And I knew this. I'm a businessman. I've got a good business mind. I've got a good legal mind, and understood it clearly what I saw, and in fact articulated that to some of the elders there in North Texas. Hey, this is a bad problem, right? You can't just take property and not remunerate people and have it turn out. Now, I know that I'm sure that they papered it up and handled it legally, but ethically, that leaves a lot of questions in people's minds. You cannot continue to do things repeatedly over and over that leads to questions in the minds of people and remain lily white. You're going to get dirty. You got this white garment, you're going to dirty it with stuff like that.
You're very open, and we're grateful for that. Many people don't want to discuss their past situations if others look askance at it. You know, but I felt that you needed to be heard. Your experiences are reality. And you haven't said anything that humans haven't gone through for hundreds of thousands.
Humanity,
you know,
there's nothing that's not common to all.
That's right.
The problem we have is we supersize it, we make it supernatural, and it's something that is to be disdained. And the reality is that living life on this planet is damn hard. And beyond it just being hard, we are imperfect, and we are inclined to do things that beget imperfection. And once we understand this and quit gigging each other for it, you know, James said to confess your sins to one another. This is why I've been very clear with you. I'm not had anything back. I've told you I was duplicit. I told you I'm an adulterer. This is humanity.
Yes.
I'm not proud of these things, but when you're put in a position to where the only way you can get out of a loveless marriage is to commit adultery, that's a problem in itself.
That's right.
And that's, you know, I don't want to go too far in this interview, but the point is, we don't need to be nitpicking people, and in particular people that we love. The whole reason that we loved what you were taught is because it came from the center of love. And we're back to what Ashton told me. If the friends know you love them, when the friends know you love them, they are drawn to you, and they don't let you go, because love is so hard to find in this world. And once you finally find it, or think you do, you don't want to let go. And it is heartbreaking to see what you were taught to mean so much, and then as time goes on, it seems to mean so little to the people who taught it to you.
Yes, I'm going to read something to you. Jane Spitfire said, "Yes, Tommy is so right. Human life is full of ups and downs and complex. Nitpicking people and shunning is wrong against your loved ones. If this group of people who claim to worship a better deity than any of the other deities would face up to this and recognize that humans are worth spending time with, showing love to, helping out, and not this other stuff that someone just put something about suicides. It's common nowadays. Suicide's so common. So many people want out of life. They don't love life because of how they've been treated in their own families from childhood up or as adults. There is also mental illness, and when you talk about allopathic and you talk about homeopathic and you talk about all of this, leave people alone to do what they want to choose for their own bodies.
Exactly. Your body is your temple.
That's right, and so you have the right to choose. If it's not illegal, you have a right to choose things, and but if it's illegal, it's like religion. You can worship; you're free to worship, but you can't harm. You can't harm in the name of religion. So,
for me, Barbara, my differences are not. It has nothing to do with anything dogma or scripture. The way what is taught, those things don't matter if you're not kind. I recall being at a district convention, and a young Bethelite was there. He'd just come back from Bethel. And he had served there for 4 years, and he was upset because the friends weren't, they weren't standing in line, right? Some ridiculous thing, right? Because, brothers get all upset about, don't do this or don't do that. And he came to me and he says, he started going into the problem he had with the friends and, why they were not listening to him. And I asked him, I said, Eric, what's more important? Theocratic procedures or people? Oh, theocratic procedures.
mm-hmm.
Well, I'm sure he was taught that because I know the men that taught him that, right? And I looked at him, I said, Eric, without people, theocratic procedures do not even matter. Mm-hmm. And here's the bottom line: kindness. That's one of the fruits of the Spirit. And it is the one that opens all doors for you. If you're not kind, if you can't find a way to be kind, you won't be successful. Mm-hmm. People will hate you. We build our own. The Buddhists call it karma, right? And Jesus said the golden rule: do unto others as you would have them do unto you, right? It's the same thing. There's no difference. That is the same teaching, and yet we don't understand this. If you're not kind. It was incredulous to me recently when they came out and said, okay, you can speak to disfellowship people at the Kingdom Hall. Oh, how kind is that? Finally, you're allowed to be kind. When the Bible tells you that one of the fruits of the Spirit that identifies you is kindness. So this thing about kindness, if we could just lead with kindness in the things that we do, things take care of themselves. By simply being kind, looking at it and say, okay, what's the kind thing to do here? What's the win? Not, do it our way or the highway. It's got to change. The whole mentality is 180 degrees out of phase.
I think we're going to have you run for political office or something. No, I know. But so many things that you say have been repeated by others. We recognize the truth of the
common sense, though.
It's doing it. It's
exactly
hard to do it, and that's where because everybody's so different.
The problem that you have now, as it relates, is people don't want to, it's like when Jesus was on the earth, they were afraid they were going to lose their place. And this is why the Pharisees treated him that way. This is where it's at. Nobody wants to lose their spot. And I've already told you just now, I went back to it after being disfellowshipped. After being removed to try to be an elder again, because I didn't want to lose my place. This is human nature, not to want to lose your place. I don't blame anybody for that. I'm not upset with anybody. I'm not angry with anybody. I don't get on the YouTube and listen to people who have angry things to say towards the society. I'm not interested in that. It doesn't interest me at all. I kind of paid attention to some of it. Some of these guys want to match wits on Dogman. No. We got a real problem here. You got kids that are being harmed that need to be protected. Why don't you get in the right camp? Now, don't argue with them over whether hell is hot or whether there's a Trinity or all of that stuff. Focus on what matters. Protecting the kids and protecting women from the machinations of men. The carnage got to end. It's got to end. And it's only going to change when people are strong enough to stand up for the change.
Well, when the organization of Jehovah's Witnesses was big and they felt powerful, that power made them feel conceited, that they could make decisions over other people's lives, and whether it even caused suffering. It was just suffering, but times are changing, and religion is having to rethink their own religions, and beliefs are, like the Methodists are changing belief on gay, the gay population, who can hold a position as a minister. And the Catholic Church is under fire. They're all under fire. If they want to survive, they're going to have to change. Why are they going to have to change? Because the results were so bad. If the results were good, you don't have to change. So take a look at, are people supporting your group anymore? Something's wrong with you then, because if they're benefiting some way or other, they will stay. If they're not benefiting and they're being harmed, they move on. So that's what we're seeing, and it isn't making me happy that this is happening to the religion.
If anybody thinks that Barbara Anderson or Tommy Geske or Stephen Unthank or any one of the other individuals who feel passionately about this are happy, you're confused.
Yeah.
Because the motives here are not sinister. The motives are about making sure that people that are being harmed and seeing their lives torn apart.
That's right.
Right.
You don't want to see another suicide. Not another suicide.
Barbara, when you go to a and we call it a Kingdom Hall or a church or whatever, people are going for spiritual guidance. And if you end up killing yourself behind the spiritual guidance that you got, something is wrong. Look at it. See what you see. Hear what you hear. When people kill themselves behind what they go through, going to church, something is wrong.
That's a good point. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the family, how are they doing of Whitney? He had children.
Yes, he has a 10-year-old daughter, and a 8-year-old son, and then he leaves behind a 5-month-old child. Billy, Golden, and Lane.
So his suicide was recent?
Oh, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is all very new. As a matter of fact, I got to be honest with you. I was forced to look at myself and my duplicity, even in Whitney's case, because at 22, I knew it was wrong. And yet I went ahead and participated. That's sobering, Barbara.
Participated in what? The judicial
I look, participated in the fact that when I stood there with Ralph and I told him the reproach is to do nothing, they did nothing. And I went on to serve and to reach out and to throw my life. And so while I don't feel guilt for that, I look the other way. Right?
You wish you had
over the stone while they stoned Stephen.
Yeah.
Right. It's the same mental vision. Right. You feel like you're doing the right thing for your God. And you end up in a place you never could have imagined. And he's not the only individual that showed up back in my life to show me that some mistakes were made. I won't go into all of that. But the fact is, when you measure your life, and in particular, if you're an elder or an ex-elder, and you measure it, and you're honest with yourself, you cannot deny these are real problems. Now, you can deny that you don't want to talk about it. You can look at it, this, it's just my job, man. It's just my job. You can take all of these positions. And people do. The Nazis did. They killed 6 million Jews, and it was just their job. So you can convince yourself that any great evil is acceptable as long as you're serving your God. Mm-hmm. This is not the place to be. Mm-hmm. And if you're in that mindset, you really need to evaluate where you're at. And you need to evaluate what you're giving yourself to. Even though I knew that the reproach was to not bring it forward at that moment, I went ahead at 20. I was a young man at 22. Went ahead and participated and threw my all into it. I had to grow up before I realized you're answerable for your actions. Mm-hmm. This isn't just about giving talks and having fun and shepherding people and counseling. Oh, I'm going to counsel this guy. This is far more important than that. This involves people's lives and their well-being and their happiness.
Mm-hmm. That's right. Mm-hmm. And the same people that make the rules, they never talk about how they break the rules.
I'm not sure all of them. To be honest, I think that to a large degree, there's such an insulation at the headquarters. They don't have families. Many of these men, they don't really know how to equate this. So there's this informational gap and this knowledge gap. And then you come up with all of these things that people need to do. And they're not considering family arrangement. They can't. How can you when everybody's single or just two couple, either a single man or a couple with no kids?
That's right.
It doesn't end up well, right? No. When you've got people who don't have the life experience telling families how to purport themselves, mm-hmm. right? And you just can't ever get to it's like the sports thing, right? Not playing sports. I recall sister came to me one time. She said, "But Tommy, I got to work till 6 o'clock." He says, "My boys are in the streets. I'm afraid they're going to get into drugs. I'd like for them to play football." I said, "Well, let them play football." The brothers called me in and said, "Hey, Geske, you told Sister Johnson she should let her boys play football." I said, "Yeah, I did." "Would you rather them deal drugs?" "Well, no." "All right. Well, where are they going to go?" "She works till 6 o'clock. It's a great place for her. Are you going to let your wife sit up?" "No." What about your wife?" "No." "Okay, then why are we here? You don't have any answers. You just want to be critical because someone said, "Hey, play football." How silly is this? It's a sport. And in fact, I've come to learn and understand that team sports is actually very healthy for children. I know because I have kids that are doing it. Mm-hmm. So, you get told something and you believe it because you think it's, directed from the mouth of God. And you find out later that that's not necessarily so. And then you figure out what you need to do to lead a happy life.
Mm-hmm. Well, when parents are told how to raise their children, and the literature sometimes have very definite instructions on raising children. Other times it's they sneak it in or, make a little side point. You get it when you're a parent. And so you want to do it because Jehovah wants, they're spokespeople for Jehovah, so you want to do it. But you never think, because you've not been a parent before, when you're a parent and you're JW, it's a new experience. So you do what they recommend, thinking it's going to be successful. But each kid is different. Each parent is different as far as raising children. That's a game, isn't it? So mind your own business when it comes to
exactly. You can't know what's going on in a family and what's best for this family. My oldest son was dyslexic, ADHD, and I allowed him to play high school football. I got called into the carpet fight. I told the Brother Johnston, it was a circuit overseer at the time. I said, this boy has a tough time reading, but he excels at sports. Why would I hold that from him, right? As long as it doesn't conflict with his theocratic schedule. And to Brother Johnston's credit, he said, Tommy, I respect your viewpoint. I won't question it any further. And he dropped it. So, look, they're all reasonable men. They're all reasonable elders and that can look at things. The problem is so many take something that's put in print that is a good practical suggestion, and they hold it as gospel. And if you don't do it, they want to persecute you. And this is where it's an appointed man problem. When brothers are appointed, they're not mature enough, or they're there to grind people into the dirt rather than to lift them up spiritually. And that does happen, and you get into situations and then brothers don't want to back down. And all of a sudden now you're having to fight about silly little things. How silly is it that you would question whether or not a single mother or grandmother who is raising her two grandsons whether their kids should play football or sell drugs. And I realize that sounds so outlandish, but that's a real story. The brothers were concerned that to play football, when her concern was, if I don't get them off the streets, they're going to get into dealing drugs.
That's true. But here again, you sound like you're reasonable and you know what you're doing with your own kids, because you know your kids. But you mentioned something that we all could talk about, and that is it doesn't interfere with the theocratic schedule. Okay. Well, what if the kid wants it to interfere with the theocratic schedule? The point I'm making is that we as parents, we told our kids the way it was going to be, and the Watchtower told us the way it has to be. So we set up these schedules. If the kid doesn't want to be a witness, he has no choice in the matter. That's what you see on Reddit. That's what you see 14-year-olds writing all over the place on Reddit. I mean, if you got a lot of time to read over there, it's fascinating. Young people who do not want this religion, and they have to have it. That's why some countries are wanting to put across some rules that you cannot make a child join a religion until he's an adult. Then they make their own decision. It isn't fair to do this.
I said Jesus was 30 when he got baptized. So,
yeah. So,
that whole thing is a whole nother subject.
We parents, we did a lot of this.
It's not productive, right? It's not productive to put a child in a situation where they're not ready to be baptized because desires are incidental to youth and blah, 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 blah. Foolishness died up more than boy. And then all of a sudden you put them in a position to where if they do something that they're inclined to do because they're young, now you have to disfellowship them for it.
Yeah.
And now you get a situation where you got a 14, 15-year-old kid that's been put out, doesn't know how to deal with that, ends up leaving and never comes back. I could name half a dozen people right now off the top of my head that I know from my youth that got disfellowship in their early teens and never came back. Never came back.
That's the carnage. That's the blood guilt there that if this is the truth, then you get everlasting life by being obedient to this organization, and then they make rules that's impossible for a human to obey, a rational human, a balanced human to obey. Then who's guilty? That the rules that are put into place are not conducive to raising children.
Mm-hmm. They're not.
No.
It would be, come on. If you think for a minute that a man that's never had a child or a woman that's never had a child can sit and articulate the best way to raise children to you, well, that's just laughable.
It is.
Right? And this is why we should have never ventured into this, right? You got something really beautiful. You're gonna make me cuss. I get excited. It upsets me when I see how beautiful the love I feel in my heart, and I see where we're at now. It's scary.
Yeah,
it is scary.
That's right. Well, that's part of growing older too. We wish we had this common sense that we have when we're older. We wish we had it when we were younger. Well, that's a flaw in our design.
Barbara, I don't know about you, but I'm looking across here at the screen. I see a 29-year-old woman. So I'm not that old. I don't think you're that
old. Well, it's all the way you think.
Age is just one of those things, and I tell you, look, you're blazing a trail in your 80s, and God bless you. You keep running and you keep doing what you do, because you are truly an inspiration for those of us that want to see. And it doesn't matter where you could be an active witness,
a
disfellowship. It doesn't matter, but to look at what you're doing.
That's right. Be useful.
And to see, hey, we're going to talk about this stuff.
That's it.
That's called moxie.
Yeah. And if you do talk about it in a clique sort of thing and a small bunch of witnesses, you'll get spoken to. You'll get spoken to that you're doing this. Yeah. So we know the problems. We don't have the solutions because we aren't running this show, the organization. We want to hear from others have to say, because it's now the time that Rick is giving us to, and told us kindly, he told us the last 20 minutes, and we agree. We have had enough of listening to ourselves anyway.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah. Okay, Rick. Thank
you.
Tommy.
Well, thank you, Tommy. You stay right here. We got some questions.
Sure.
We have some people are going to be coming in via the telephone line as well as on our video stream here. So let's bring Ruby on. If Ruby's hears us, let's bring Ruby on. Ruby, can you hear us? Go ahead, speak up. Ruby, you wanted to come on?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, Ruby. Yep.
Hi, how you guys doing?
Hi.
Hi, Ruby.
Hey, Ruby.
Hi, I'm so glad that I get to finally catch you guys on a live because I am such a fan of Barbara.
Oh,
we all are.
I'll adopt you. Thank you. That's a very sweet thing to say.
Yes, I just wanted to let you know that if it wasn't for you, I still would be a Jehovah's Witness today. Like literally all the work that you have done back in the day woke me up to the ugly truth of the CSA issues among the Jehovah's Witnesses. And if it wasn't for your activism in 2014, 2015, I probably would still be a witness today. So I wanted to let you know that you are literally a saint. And I thank you for all of your work that you have done since forever. You're amazing.
Well, let me tell you why I do it. I put my feet in other shoes. I've done that since I was a small child. It's just a natural reflex of my whole being. And so I couldn't bear what others were going through. And I knew what was the reason for it. And that's the reason I do what I do. only because I have the knowledge. I learned about it. I had to share it because I was so concerned of what people were going through. I couldn't imagine what a child was going through. I just couldn't bear it. So,
You're an empath.
yeah. And I'm sure that many of us who are doing this, we're doing it for that reason, not to put ourselves out there as special, but it's nice to be appreciated. And I'd love to meet you one of these days. Come and visit, like so many people that we've gotten to know, wonderful people. And we carry the same baggage as the other ex-witnesses, just so we have a lot of in common. And we learn from one another.
Right. But I think it's also more important coming from another female ex-Jehovah's Witness, because the space is very dominated by other extra W men. And you were one of the first women that I was able to look up to and say, wow, this was a woman who worked in Bethel. She was in it. You were in the lion's den and you escaped. And that for me was that's what made me trust that the information was right. I wasn't going to believe that, she's just an apostate or she's lying about something. And I said, no, this is another mother, this is another woman. And as a woman, and then later on I became a young mom, I was like, if it wasn't for Barbara, a lot of us, ex-Jehovah's Witness young women, we actually have somebody to look up to. And I just read your book, and I could not believe it. I was like, oh my God. And I am going to review your book on my channel, and I am going to promote it as much as I can, because it is amazing. I think everybody should read that book.
Oh, that's very sweet of you. I hope it helps people. What I didn't put in there is really, I could make another book, but the way we laid that one out was for a specific message. But I have so many internal happenings to me that I didn't put. People really want me to talk about it. And one of these days, I probably will. As a woman at Bethel, in fact, when I was leaving, the one senior writer said to another, how could Barbara leave here when no woman has reached the point she has in respect of the organization? It was a circumstance. That's all it was. It was a circumstance. But I learned a lot of inner secrets that I really never have talked about, because to me, that was just people junk. Those people stuff. Everybody's got, they make errors, and many of them are at Bethel, and they've made some doozies that got covered up. So 2 weeks ago, on Saturday, a man who is a close friend of mine, who I worked with daily in the writing department, he died. And he was 93 years old, and he died with every sort of secret. He knew where all the skeletons were buried, and he used to tell me a lot of his secrets. And I'm going to say this, and he had a good life. And he told me, when I told him I was leaving, he said, you're doing the right thing. On the phone, he actually said, I don't blame you for leaving the organization. We're not handling all of this correctly. But he had a good life at Bethel. And this is something many people don't realize. When you reach a certain point at Bethel, you have a wonderful life. Financially, you have a wonderful life because people give you money. The man that died just 2 weeks ago, he had a new car every year because a rich witness bought him a new car, he and his wife a new car. They traveled around the world many times. They had what he could want, a beautiful apartment. And at the same time, he had a reputation amongst the worldwide brotherhood as being somebody. He really, really had an extraordinary existence on this earth, and millions of people don't have an extraordinary existence. But because he was at the Watchtower, as well as many of the other ones who are at the Watchtower for years, and this man was there probably 60 years, and he had a hard time sometimes in the beginning. He got himself in hot water one time, and they took him out of the offices and put him over in the factory as punishment. And it took years. It took President Noor to die before they brought him back into the writing department. Yeah, he had punishment but he learned by it. I'm not condoning him. I'm saying these are the things people don't see. They don't see that what goes on in the headquarters, the real life stories of different people, how they arrange their lives to have a fabulous life at Bethel. And then there are those who are fighters at Bethel for to have change, and then they get pushed down, and there's injustices. I've never told a story about a woman who tried to take my position on my job in the writing department, and what she didn't go through to try to get my job. And I found out years later that she was a child abuse victim. And so it was never handled correctly. And as she grew up, she had a skewed view on life. So, this organization is made up of people, and we all got our idiosyncrasies. But the thing to do is in this organization is to have respect for one another, and do as our esteemed guest talks about, kindness, and not be bitter. If you leave the organization or you have problems, not to be bitter, and try to make a good life for yourself with what you have left on this earth, which Ruby, I think you're trying to do, and probably have succeeded. So I've learned a lot. I've lived a long life. I've watched others, and I've learned from them. That's what you do as you grow older. As a woman, you learn. And you learn what kind of men you want to avoid.
Yeah, exactly. But that's why I'm actually happy that you came out the door with the CSA issues as the very first most important issue, because aside from everything else, I think that we need to be a voice for the children, the Jehovah's Witness children that are still stuck in there, and their parents just don't know, like my mom, they just are brainwashed. And sometimes, thank God I grew up, I was born and raised in the religion, but thank God I came out relatively okay. But for the rest of the people, I mean, that's why I started my channel, and that's literally what I talk about. It's CSA issues, because you never think that it's a problem or that it's never going to happen to you. And then you find out, oh, brother so-and-so was disfellowshipped. And then, they never give you a reason why they're disfellowshipped. But when you find out, and then it happened to my own family, where I found out that my uncle was caught for trying to meet up with a minor. That's what makes you think. It's like, he just got caught now, but what about all the other times that he was getting disfellowshipped and nobody knows why, and there's no transparency, and there's no protection for the children?
The reason for that is because those who were disfellowshipped, if they had a little bit of money or so, they sued the society. They used to tell you years ago, when I came a witness, when they announced disfellowship, they told a lie. And then I find out later on that the reason is that they can't do that in this world. You can't do that without getting sued under certain circumstances, of course. So, and I'm sure Tommy has something to say about that too, right?
I am actually listening with bated breath to you two ladies. It's a beautiful thing to see two women come together on this subject, because I do agree with Ruby that this is an issue for mothers first, right? Mothers protect their children. Fathers do as well. They should. But fathers always, got his head in the clouds, building castles and trying to pay for things. And that's kind of how he's cut. So this is a woman's issue. And perhaps you hit on the reason why so much is not being taken seriously is because there's no women in the equation.
Well, that's true, and also this business on suing is a very, very real thing in organizations today. So, with the Watchtower, the legal department, and initially years ago, there was only like one lawyer. My husband remembers him well. His last name was Steele, Steel, and a very nice man. But as the years progressed, as the organization got bigger and bigger, lawsuits started because we all recognize that that's a risk. That's why people have insurance. You set up an organization of any sort nowadays, and you can get sued. And but there's a question come on here, which Ruby, stay here. It says, Donnie Etta. Question for Tommy, please. How can XJWs alert local authorities in a peaceful way about how vulnerable and unprotected JW minors are within their own congregation from sexual predators? So how can they do that in a peaceful way?
Well, Barbara, I got to ask Donnie why you would feel like you need to do that in a peaceful way. I think the time for a peaceful way for protecting our children is probably past. This requires people to stand up. If you feel like that there are Jehovah's Witness, any minor, we take the Jehovah's Witness thing out of it, any minor who is in a position to where they are in danger, we don't have to be peaceful about the way we protect them. That would be my advice to Donnie. Look, if you feel certain that there's a child that's in danger, stand up and say and do the right things, right? Don't go accusing people of things you don't know. That'll get you in trouble. Mm-hmm. But if you are certain that things are going on, then you don't have to be peaceful. Mm-hmm. The time for peaceful, you don't peacefully in any way when you're dealing with a predator. There's no peaceful approach. There's just not.
It's true, though, but, if Jehovah's Witnesses get a reputation for harboring child molesters, that kind of solves the problem because the authorities mark it. They keep up with in Washington, they have a lot of records and a lot of organizations and government organizations that know what's going on because I've talked to people who are affiliated with these organizations. They know that Jehovah's Witnesses have a big problem here. So I think Donnie might be asking also, should we tell the authorities that there's a problem? We don't know a specific one, but Jehovah's Witnesses keep handling things or not handling.
I can never encourage anybody to call the authorities with ideas, right? Oh, I think this or I think that. But if you are certain that there's a predator, that's exactly a harsh word. Predator means you kill. You kill other things, right? You kill them and feast on them. And if you're feasting on the innocence of children. Now, I would also say this. When I was an elder, and we had some guys in the hall that were questionable, I didn't shrink back from going and saying, hey, how are you doing with this thing, right? Or are you behaving yourself? Because when you get in someone's face and you let them know if at the very least it protects your children. Now, they may go feed on someone that's not paying attention, but, the only thing I can tell you is to take things head on. There's just be manly or womanly about it. I don't accuse people of things that I don't know. But if I'm certain.
Well, there was a case.
I just wanted to come in here, Barbara, and say to Tommy, that was an excellent answer. Yeah. That's an excellent answer that Tommy gave to Donnie, and that there is no peaceful way. That this I like his description of a predator. That's a killer, really. That's harming children to the point of many children commit suicide because of it. But while I got him here, we got a few minutes left here, Barbara. I got a few more people who want to ask a few questions here. But I just wanted to come in here and just say hello to Bobby myself. I got a thought for him. Bobby, I noticed when you were, talking with Barbara here today, a couple of times you did break up, and that's okay. I think all of us, to some degree, at one point, we had a real sincere feeling for the Watchtower. We felt like we really belonged to something. And of course, even being an elder or ministerial servant or whatever position a person was in, if they had any responsibility at all, they really wanted to fulfill that responsibility. And so I can see when Barbara asked you about, how you felt as an elder and why is that you kind of went back again to a small degree, is because that feeling, they empower you with feeling. Very, very good. I really enjoyed the conversation here tonight, Tommy.
Point.
Really, really did. Excellent job. Let's see. Do we have another person? We did have another person that you coming on. Did you want to say hello to Tommy? Now is the time to come on. Go ahead. You're with us.
Hello, hello, Tommy.
Yes.
Oh, yes, I enjoy your the practical wisdom that you really seem to have. It's really nice to hear someone that is, really able to take things and put them in the proper order. I wanted to ask you, you were mentioning about yourself having a beard before the Watchtower, became all excited about things like that. What is your opinion as to why they're making all these recent changes? What do you think they're doing?
Well, I'd first off distance myself from my own opinion. It's hard to know the motives of people, right? But I will say that when people begin to change under duress, you now have to question what their motives are, right? If I come to you and I know that I've hurt you, I know that I've said something to you that has harmed you, and I come to you unsolicited because I've thought it through myself, and I say, sis, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean it that way. Now you know that my heart is in the right place. But if after you have come after me and come after me and come after me, and you are trying to get your hearing from me, and finally I show, okay, all right, there you go. Here's a few crumbs. You now have to question that. Now, I don't know what their motives, and I would also tell you that I know many, many men in the organization who are good men, who make good decisions, who have sound reasoning, right? But I can't give you a definitive answer on what their motives are. I can only tell you what I see. And if you'll look at a picture and see what you see and hear what you hear and evaluate that on its merit, you'll make good decisions, right? The problem is our entire lives, we were told not to think for ourselves. Most of the Bible doesn't apply to you. It applies to someone else. And all of the things that you learned was for someone else, right? Because you don't have this hope. You got another hope. So we get it confused in our minds. But at the end of the day, you have within you the ability to look at the situation and ask yourself, what am I going to do before my God or universe or whatever it is that's motivating you now, and be the best version of yourself. You can do that, and it's within your reach, with or without whether or not the brother's motives are pure or not.
So you think that they have pure motives in what they're doing?
I think that some do, and I think that some don't. I think some are covering over, and some honestly would like to see things get fixed. But this is a organization of a lot of people, and not everyone that has the motives are in control of things.
And the arrangement is really not workable. When you have an arrangement where you're an appointed servant of an organization and you have to speak their words, and nobody really knows your words or your heart because you got to do what you're told, it's not a workable arrangement. And that's why there's so much trouble in it. And
I would tell you also the motivations of people it's hard to know. I can tell you my experience as an elder, right, in the time that I served. If you had 10 brothers on a body of elders, 3 really cared about the friends, 3 were indifferent, and then 3 of those guys, 3 and a third, whatever, they were just there for the privileges. And so it's hard to know what someone's motives are. I can only tell you what we see, and what we see is ugly.
Mm-hmm. And those elders never know what goes on behind closed doors. My husband would be the first one to vouch for that. He said we never knew what the stories that they would tell, people would tell when they were accused of something was not necessarily true, because you find out later that wasn't the truth.
They're in fear. And when you're in fear, you lie.
Yeah.
And when you lie, you know, the whole institution is such that it makes people afraid. And when you're afraid, you do foolish things.
And the biggest problem with child abuse in this organization, as in many organizations, is incest. That's what the records show, incest. So these are people coming in this organization that have histories of incest. And so you don't know what goes on behind closed doors. And so you don't know why the children are problematic. See, there's just so many ins and outs and ifs and buts and whatever that you can't write rules for.
You know, Barbara, I think the problem is we as humans want a black and white answer.
Yes.
And life is shades of gray. Every matter, every tub stands in its own bottom, right? Every bucket sits on its own bottom. And so if you get into looking for black and white, you'll be disappointed. We have to accept people for how they are and who they are, and love them through their imperfections. And when we do that, we get along, right? But it's only when we tear each other apart, we annihilate each other. And this is what you're seeing. You're seeing an annihilation, a scattering at the hands of policies that don't work.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Hey, Barbara and Tommy, we got to probably wrap it up. You guys can have your last word. We got some other programs we're doing here tonight. So go ahead, Tommy, take a minute or so and let them know what your last words would be on our program tonight. And Barbara, you as well. So go ahead, Tommy. What do you want to say to the people?
Well, I think I probably said all I need to say, Rick. But I will say this, Barbara, I go back to where I started with you. Thank you so much for having me on and for listening to me cackle. And thank you so much. I'll echo Ruby's sentiments for the things that you do. And I you know, as I sit here and I think of all the active witnesses that I know, and ex-witnesses and disfellowship persons and so on and so forth, no one should have a problem with wanting to protect our children.
That's exactly right.
And that includes every member on the governing body of Jehovah's Witnesses. It should be a paramount thing. And people should not feel ashamed to come on with you and talk about this particular subject. I know that witnesses, they go, you know, in particular, the way we're brought up, we question this, we question that. We want to be obedient to authority. But let me tell you, when it comes to protecting the kids, right, we need to talk about it. And I'm sorry if some men don't want to. I'm sorry if some guys think that that's a bad idea for whatever reason. Talking about this subject is important, because we've got to get to the bottom of it. Whether it's today or tomorrow or next year, you know, we just got to keep picking them up, putting them down.
I agree with you. I left the organization over children. I only had one, but I left it over children, not dogma. And I'll continue to talk about this till I die, because it is one of the most important things. This is the future of our world, whether you're in a religion or not a religion.
You know, Barbara, on the way into this office real quick, I'll wrap my last thing. I was listening to Simon and Garfunkel's Bridge Over Troubled Water. Beautiful song. And I thought of you. I thought of you when I read it, because in many ways you are a bridge over troubled water. There's so many people like Ruby and others who haven't come on the show, and they have all of these questions. You really are a bridge over troubled water, in that all of this water underneath, and you're building a bridge for people to walk across and talk about. And it is time to talk about it. I don't care if it's uncomfortable for people. It doesn't matter if it's uncomfortable. It's time for people to stand up and start talking about this issue because it matters. And thank you for being that bridge. And if I can be a bridge over your troubled water, please let me do that.
You did a wonderful, wonderful job this evening telling everybody who you are, what you're all about. And you were very open and frank, and that's good. We don't need to necessarily do this, what you're doing, to help children. We can do it in our own way to help children. And not necessarily just Jehovah's Witnesses children.
All of them.
Get involved with the legal establishments in your area to change child abuse laws. You know, just doing send some money where there are so many agencies in my area right here that are working for helping children.
Children, ecclesiastical privilege has to be looked at. There's so much here that we can talk about.
Yeah. If you want healthy adults, you got to work with the children.
Right.
If you got troubled adults, that's because they are troubled, not 100%, because you got mental issues also. But, you know, do the volunteer thing. You'll never be sorry. You'll sleep well at night knowing that you're useful to help the next generation. It doesn't. We took in a 12-year-old boy, and we had him for 2 years, a foster boy. It was a Bible study had him, and he had to leave that place, and we took him, and he was wonderful. He taught us, but he was part Indian and part Mexican, and we lived in South Florida, and it was a blessing for us in our sheltered life to have taken this boy in for 2 years. So
I would like to say if anybody that would like to correspond with me about anything, my email address is redemptive.son, S-O-N, @yahoo.com, redemptive.son@yahoo.com. And I'm happy to engage anybody that might have questions about life and how to pilot this channel that we're in. I'm not an expert, but I'm verbose.
Well, you're a man of action.
Thank you.
How about this, Rick? Have we said enough?
Oh, well, we got to get going. What happens, Barbara, is we have, 14 programs running here on the 6th screen. Number on here tonight. So what happens is these people bring guests on. And sometimes the guests don't have the patience, but we had the patience listening to you guys tonight. But we want to thank Tommy for coming on, and Barbara, great interview. I got a lot of people writing me saying it was a good program. So thank you both. Thank you both for coming on the 6 screens tonight. I wanted to also thank Ruby for coming on. She's doing a great job making some videos. She's kind of really getting out there in a big way. She does a great job. So keep up the good work, Ruby, and thank you for coming on tonight.
I'm so glad she came on because I'll have to look at some of what she's doing.
Well, there's so many. What's really good right now, Barbara and Tommy, is there's so many people that are coming out. I know when I first went on YouTube, back in 2009, there was only 5 of us on there. It was amazing that people could start speaking up, and now there's like 500 Jehovah's Witnesses, ex-witnesses that are speaking up. It's like a bombardment. So they're all good.
Ruby said they're mostly men, though. We got to get the girls.
Well, you get the girls coming in here. We had a good program tonight. A lot of listening in here, Barbara, close to 200. In fact, have listened in live stream, which is very, very good. When the program goes up, you'll probably hit 5,000 to 10,000 people when it's uploaded. So good job. Keep up the good work. Don't you guys ever give in, up or out. And Barbara, we'll see you in 2 weeks. And Tommy, once again, thank you very much for being on.
Thank you for having me on. I appreciate you, sir.
Thank you, Tommy. Rick, thank you for making it possible.
Thank you. All righty. Thank you.
See you soon.
Yeah, see you soon. Right. Well, anyways, we've got more programming coming up here tonight. on the Six Screens Telenetwork. You don't want to go anywhere. We have JW World News coming up next, and right on this channel as well as the Facebook channel. So just stay where you are and you won't miss it. And then, of course, after the news tonight, we have Eric, our good friend Eric. He's a former witness out of Nashville, Tennessee, and he'll be coming on tonight with his Awakening After the Watchtower program. So by all means, we're looking forward to Eric as well. So we're going to end this broadcast right here, and then we're going to go to JW World News. We'll be there in just about a minute or two. So stay with us. Thank you for listening in tonight.